Okay.
So with that, let's move into the second tool that you could use to continue to build yourself as a lifestyle advisor. We saw how lucrative that can be. We talked about the vision cards already as being an excellent way to do that, but this will also continue to move you in that direction of having a broader role in your client's retirement. I'm sure that most of you flew here, or at least many of you flew here to get to this meeting today, and if you did, as you got on the plane, you had a choice. You either got through the door of the plane and you turned right to kind of go find your seat and sit down, maybe you were on your phone, or you turned left for a moment and you looked into the cockpit, and if you did, you probably saw something like this. And if you're a regular flyer and you're comfortable with that, maybe you didn't think too much of it. But if you're not a regular flyer, and frankly, if you really thought this through at all, and you had any kind of sense of your own self-preservation, anyone at all, might actually look at that at some moment in time and take it in and turn right around and walk right off the plane. Because the idea that two fallible human beings can control all of those gauges and all of those metrics is almost implausible. It's almost unbelievable. And it really is kind of disturbing, especially if you're a nervous flyer. So there was one particular afternoon where I was stranded on the tarmac during a thunderstorm, sitting on the plane for hours, waiting for us to get clearance to take off, and we're all just sitting there. And I was thinking about this, and I actually got permission from the flight attendant to talk to the pilots. And in this day and age, you have to be really careful with that kind of thing. You can't just go into the cockpit. So I asked the flight attendant, I said I was working on this project, and I actually asked for permission to go in there. And after she realized that I was serious and she talked to the pilots, they were actually very nice about it. They put their beer down and they talked to me a little bit, and they asked me what I was looking for. And I explained what we were doing here with this particular analogy. And I said, how do you keep track of all of this information? And they pulled out this little card about the size of a boarding pass, a physical piece of paper, and they said, well, this is what we call our flight checklist, our pre-flight checklist. And there are about 50 items listed on this checklist, and we follow these in the same order together, audibly, out loud, between myself and the co-pilot every single time. So they actually demonstrated it for me. They call it call and response. The pilot calls out the instruction, and the co-pilot answers. And they go through each one of those 50 things in that particular order, and they demonstrated it for me, and they let me try it, like I was a little kid. I got to call out one of the tasks. And sure enough, by the time I walked away from there, I had full faith that they, in fact, did that exact same procedure every single time. And if I were a nervous flyer, and I saw them doing that, I would walk away from that experience feeling more what? More comfortable, more confident. Now, we think that this whole thing is an apt analogy for the way a lot of clients look at retirement. Because if you're an unsure client and you're looking into retirement and you see all of these measures and gauges and needles and so on, it starts to look a little bit like the questions that you might have about so many aspects of retirement. When are all these things going to happen? What are the withdrawals that I'm required to take? What is my elective withdrawal? Do I have to do all these things at certain times? It can be absolutely overwhelming. And I think our instinct as people is to take all those variables, put them in a drawer, shove the drawer shut, and hope that at some point we'll figure it out when we need to. And it's nerve-wracking. And so in the same way that that pilot was able to make me feel more confident about his ability to safely get me to my destination with his pre-flight checklist, you're in that position with clients by having a plan, by having a specific pre-flight checklist that's connected with their retirement. And so that's what we've got for you as the next tool, because we believe that most clients look to the future as being chaotic, their retirement future as chaos. If you can bring order to that chaos, we believe that you're going to instill that confidence that the pilot can instill in those nervous flyers. So their retirement chaos, you're providing order for, it's resulting in their increased confidence. And the tool that we've developed for you to do that, we call the Retirement Lifeline. Now, the Retirement Lifeline is a very personalized blueprint. It's a plan. It's a pre-flight checklist for their retirement to start to put in some basic events and some basic factors that are going to affect their retirement debits, as we call them, and also their credits. Money that they're going to have to pay out during retirement and money that's going to start coming in during retirement, and start to make sense of all of those factors. It begins with some simple things like what year they're going to turn 62 or 65. And then it starts to layer in some things that will just automatically affect their retirement that are pre-printed on your form, but also some very personal things related perhaps to their goals that they completed earlier with the vision cards in some cases, or to personal things related to their family, when they might expect their children to get married if that's relevant, or their grandchildren to come along that might trigger events, etc. So this is a list that you'll find in your Retirement Lifeline, and we think that this is a tool that's most effective if you can actually give it a whirl yourself. Try it out for yourself. So as our next exercise, we're going to invite you to get together in groups of 3, and to first of all, actually fill this out for yourself so that you have a sense of what this looks like for you personally. You can experience that. And then we're going to ask you to do a little bit of hands-on work with this as though you were using it with a client. What kinds of financial implications do you see in your partner's lifelines? How would you debrief this if they were a client of yours? What opportunities do you see? What questions would you have? And we're going to have you do that in groups of 3. This is an example of how you might begin to fill this out, some samples of goals, of family-specific information that you'll see as you start to fill out the lifeline for yourselves.